Emerging markets, right? Always hunting for that next big opportunity. Well, today, we're diving into a region that probably makes you think more about vacation getaways than financial markets, the Caribbean. But what if I told you it's on the verge of a major financial shift?
Yeah, it's a really interesting case study. You have the Caribbean at this crossroads, kind of torn between clinging to these fragmented economies, heavily reliant on tourism, or embracing this whole new unified financial system. And
Mm.
that's really what this year's JSE Guyana Conference was all about.
Right, the Financing for Success conference. And I have to say, I really liked their theme this year, where passion, prosperity, and people align. It shows they're thinking about the bigger picture, right?
Absolutely. And, a key theme that really emerged from all of this was the potential for a unified Caribbean stock exchange to truly unlock investment and really fuel diversification throughout the region.
Okay, so let's unpack that a bit. The Caribbean has always faced challenges when it comes to attracting investment beyond tourism. And our sources point to fragmented financial markets as a major hurdle for businesses.
Especially smaller businesses.
Exactly. Imagine, trying to grow a business, trying to scale up your operations when you're limited to the capital available on just a single island. It's like trying to sail across the ocean in a rowboat, a regional stock exchange. That could change everything. That could be like, drawing investment not just from within the Caribbean, but from all around the world.
So instead of a rowboat, they'd have a whole fleet of ships
Yeah.
fueled by this larger pool of capital. That kind of opportunity has the potential to be a game changer, don't you think?
Oh, absolutely. And it plays into another major theme from the conference, diversification. You see, the Caribbean's reliance on tourism, it makes it very vulnerable to global shocks, as we saw with the pandemic. But then you have Guyana. Guyana's recent oil boom offers a powerful example of how diversifying into new sectors can bring in major investment. Yeah, Guyana's been attracting some serious attention lately. But not every Caribbean nation is sitting on a reserve of oil, right? Could a unified stock exchange really help replicate that kind of success in other areas?
That's the hope. And there is a precedent for it. Look at the Jamaica Stock Exchange, or JSE. Despite Jamaica's size, the JSE consistently ranks among the top performing exchanges globally. It just shows that with the right framework in place, size doesn't have to be a barrier to success.
So if Jamaica can do it, why not other Caribbean nations? But there is another challenge that our sources highlighted. Imagine navigating different financial rules and regulations on each island. Talk about a bureaucratic nightmare.
Oh, it is a real obstacle. And that's actually why a key focus of this conference was on creating a single, unified set of rules for the entire region.
Yeah.
Leaders from different Caribbean stock exchanges were actually in the room, like hashing out solutions to these complex issues.
Wow, tackling the big questions head on. But how do you even begin to untangle that web of regulations? It can't just be talk, right? There needs to be some concrete action.
You're absolutely right. And the conference laid out some really clear steps forward. They emphasized that this isn't just an idea. It's about turning talk into transformation.
So we've talked about the need for a unified set of rules, but what are those key action items? How do you actually go from this fragmented system to a unified Caribbean stock exchange?
Well, the conference highlighted three major areas of focus. First, harmonizing those financial regulations. So, streamlining the process for businesses. No more navigating a maze of different rules for each island.
Creating a level playing field so everyone's operating under the same set of standards. What's next on the agenda?
Technology is going to be absolutely crucial. The second action item focuses on building a unified digital platform. For the entire Caribbean Stock Exchange, think of it like creating a regional financial hub, accessible to investors from literally all around the world.
That makes a lot of sense. A strong digital platform wouldn't just improve accessibility, but it would also increase transparency, which is key for building trust with investors, right?
Exactly. And that actually ties into the final action item, fostering regional cooperation. It's not enough to just have a plan. Caribbean nations need to work together to make it a reality.
Because a rising tide lifts all boats, as they say. But let's dive a little deeper into how this would actually work in practice. Our sources mention this important role of broker-dealers.
Yeah, broker-dealers would be essential, connecting Caribbean businesses with that global pool of investors we were talking about, facilitating the flow of capital into the region, acting as those crucial intermediaries,
Yeah.
guiding businesses through the complexities of actually listing on the exchange, and then connecting them with potential investors.
They're like the matchmakers of the financial world. But even with all the pieces in place, there's still the question of liquidity. Some critics argue that a regional stock exchange just won't work in the Caribbean because there simply isn't enough trading activity.
It's a valid concern. But a unified exchange could actually address that by pooling resources and attracting a larger pool of investors, both domestic and international. The unified exchange creates a more dynamic marketplace.
So by creating this larger, more unified market, they're actually increasing the potential for liquidity, essentially proving the critics wrong.
Precisely. It becomes kind of a self-fulfilling prophecy. The more investors see the potential of a unified Caribbean market, the more likely they are to participate, which in turn attracts even more investors. It's about building momentum.
Okay, that makes sense. But let's talk about sustainability for a moment. The Caribbean has incredible potential when it comes to renewable energy, right? Could a unified stock exchange help unlock that as well?
Absolutely. This is where things get really interesting. The Caribbean is perfectly positioned to become a global leader in renewable energy. Abundant sunshine, wind, geothermal resources, and a unified stock exchange could be the key to attracting the investment they need to develop those resources.
It's like they're sitting on a gold mine of clean energy. And with the right financial mechanisms in place, they can start to tap into that potential.
Precisely. And you know that's not just good for the Caribbean, it's good for the planet.
It's a win-win situation. Investors are increasingly looking for opportunities that align with their values. And the Caribbean offers the chance to support both financial growth and a sustainable future. Now, we know what needs to happen, but how do they actually get it done?
Well, the conference sources really emphasize the need for a multifaceted approach. For one, they can draw on that model securities legislation finalized back in 2019 as a blueprint for harmonizing those financial regulations. It's already there, ready to be implemented.
So that's a concrete step towards regulatory alignment. What about the digital platform? Where do they even begin with that?
They can learn from existing models. The Jamaica Stock Exchange, for example, has a very successful online trading platform. They could adapt and scale that model for a regional exchange.
So they don't have to reinvent the wheel. They can learn from what's already working.
Sure.
And finally, there's that all-important element of regional cooperation. How do they ensure everyone's on board and working towards the same goal?
It requires collaboration between governments, financial institutions, the private sector. They need to establish a shared vision and work together to make it a reality.
Because a unified Caribbean stock exchange isn't just about numbers on a screen, is it?
It's about creating opportunities for businesses to grow, for
Well,
people to invest in their future, and for the Caribbean to become a leader in that global transition to a more sustainable economy.
it's a powerful vision. But as with any investment opportunity, there are risks to consider. We've been talking about this potential unified Caribbean stock exchange. And, it sounds incredibly promising. But as you always say, every investment opportunity has its own set of risks. What are some of the potential downsides that investors should be aware of?
Yeah, you're right. It's always important to approach these things with a balanced perspective. One major factor to consider is volatility. Emerging markets like the Caribbean tend to be more susceptible to global economic shifts, political events, and of course, let's not forget about natural disasters. They can have a significant impact on the region.
That's true. The Caribbean is beautiful. But it's also prone to hurricanes and other natural events. So investors would definitely need to factor that into their calculations. What other challenges could impact the success of a unified exchange?
Well, execution risk is another key consideration. We've outlined the steps. But actually putting those plans into practice, it can be a very complex and often lengthy process. There could be unforeseen roadblocks, delays, even disagreements among stakeholders.
So while the vision is clear, turning that vision into a reality could be challenging. And what about issues of transparency and governance? How can investors be confident that their investments will be managed responsibly and ethically?
That's a critical point. Strong regulatory frameworks, transparent financial reporting, a commitment to good governance practices. Those are absolutely essential. Without those elements in place, investor confidence can erode very quickly.
So there are definitely risks to consider. But let's not forget about the potential rewards either. We're talking about a region with incredible untapped resources, a young and growing population, and a real hunger for progress.
Exactly. And for investors who are willing to take that long-term perspective, do their due diligence, and who really understand the complexities of emerging markets, the Caribbean could offer some very, very compelling opportunities.
Especially in the area of renewable energy, right? It seems like there's a real opportunity for the Caribbean to become a global leader in that space.
Absolutely. That transition to a more sustainable future is happening, and the Caribbean is perfectly positioned to capitalize on that trend. They have the natural resources, they have the political will, and with a unified stock exchange, they would have the platform to attract the investment needed to really develop those resources.
So it's not just about making a profit. It's about being a part of something bigger, something that could have a lasting positive impact.
Precisely. And that's a powerful motivator for a lot of investors today.
It's been a fascinating deep dive, exploring the potential of a unified Caribbean stock exchange. We've covered the opportunities, the challenges, the risks, and the rewards. If there's one key takeaway you want our listeners to remember, what would it be?
I think the biggest takeaway is that the Caribbean is at a pivotal moment. The decisions they make today, they will shape their economic future for years to come. So whether you're an investor, an entrepreneur, or just someone interested in emerging markets and sustainable development, this is a story worth following closely.
And who knows, maybe you'll even decide to be a part of it. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. Until next time, stay curious.